Acts chapter number 8, verse number 1 through 8. And you may be seated. I will just teach and preach as I go. We're going to talk from a thought process or the subject matter of there was great joy in this city. Verse number 1 through 8. And we look at this historically, and we recognize that we're talking about the church. We're talking about the church being activated, the church moving, the church gaining momentum based upon what Jesus Christ has already commissioned the church to do. To go into Jerusalem, to go into Samaria, to go into the uttermost parts of the earth. And so we recognize that the church is now starting to catch wind of the Spirit of God that is causing them to move into areas where they have not been before. The interesting thing is that when you go into areas that you have not been before, you have to be able to take a risk and take a chance and do things that are unorthodox and do things that people say that cannot be done. But because you are moved by vision, you are moved by purpose, you are moved by your spirit that's on the inside of you that's pushing you, we see that Saul is showing us that bad things can happen will give us an opportunity for good ministry. See, in verse number 1, we recognize that Saul has already authorized the martyrdom of Stephen. And because he authorized this martyrdom, the church thought that was bad news. But what I recognize is that he'll turn the bad news and turn it around for good news. The Bible tells us that even in the Exodus, that the more they were afflicted, the more they multiplied. And so what we understand clearly now is that Saul is consenting unto the death of Stephen. And at that time, there was a great persecution. Say persecution. I'm here to let you know that many times we lose the persecution and we don't understand that they that live godly shall suffer persecution. It is a normative thing, saints of God, to go through what you just got to go through. Don't start looking at your going through as something odd. Peter tells us that don't think it's strange according to the fiery trials as though some strange thing has happened. You just might as well just buckle up your seatbelt and enjoy the ride, because God has a blessing on the other side of your persecution. God has a blessing on the other side of you I want to give up. God has a blessing on the other side of you I can't take it anymore. God has a blessing on the other side that I want to throw in the towel. God has a blessing through your persecution. And so the Bible tells us that they were persecuted, and the more they were persecuted, the more the church brought out. Can you imagine that, Pastor McDowell? You were going through what you have to go through in your body in this season. Last year it was the same thing, but it was with another problem. And the more you are persecuted, the more the devil comes against you, the more the church is going to grow. I believe that First Lady McDowell would have never found her voice if you were here. And so you have to recognize that when you go through what you have to go through, you are not doing it on your own. The Spirit of God is moving you. And because Peter said, upon this rock, I will build my church, and the very gates of hell shall not prevail against it. So you, as long as you stand upon the rock, the devil cannot come against you. Now, we understand that there was a great persecution against the church, the ecclesia, which was at Jerusalem. And they were all scattered. Say scattered. Many times what we think is God is messing, not allowing the church to bloom. He's really enlarging the church through scattering. Sometimes we think that if that person stays, and if that person stays, we're going to be able to be blessed. But I found out in my tenure as a pastor, the scattering is nothing but a pruning for the blessing. So the more he prunes you, the more you're going to bring forth more fruit. The more he prunes you, the more you're going to bring forth much more fruit. So don't be indifferent when they leave. Just understand the systematic system of God is that when God allows persecution, it's for your growth. When God allows the scattering, it's for your growth. I heard First Lady Trina say this a long time ago. It's a win-win situation. It's a win-win when they stay. It is a win-win when they go. But as long as you find yourself in the will of God. So God shows us here is that the church is not exempt from hard times. Many times we think that the church is exempt from hard times, and when we go through and we think that if I go through, God has abandoned me. All right. I hear Jesus saying, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? And this is the echo that reverberates through the hearts and minds of men in this day and time, that many times we think that God has forsaken us when we have to go through a hard time. But we see here is that when they were scattered, they went throughout the region. The church goes out throughout the region, and Judea and Samaria, and except the apostles. Now I got an attitude problem right here, because all the time the church is moving, the apostles are staying right in Jerusalem. Sometimes if we're not careful, we get stuck, and we don't move when the Spirit moves. But God has an unusual, uncanny way of making sure that we are in sync with Him, because He will have an outbreak over here in Sacramento. He will have an outbreak over here in Roseville. He will have an outbreak. Oh, y'all don't hear what I'm saying. See, those that leave your ministry, they may have to end up somewhere else. And they may have to call for the apostle Kevin McDowell. Oh, you don't hear what I'm saying. And so now, verse number 2 says, and devout men, and made great lamentation over him as Saul, and he made havoc. He made havoc of the church of the ecclesia, and entering into every house, and hailing men and women, committing them to prison. The point that I want to derive from this is that afflicted church becomes the effective church. Every time God afflicts you, He's causing you to be effective, because now you get to walk on Satan's head. See, we don't recognize the power that we have until we have to go through some affliction. The Bible tells us in James that if you are sick, let him call. James chapter number 5. If you are sick, let him call for the elders of the church. But if you're afflicted, let you pray for yourself. And so I don't know the power that I have that's lying dormant on the inside until I have to get checked by the devil. Look at your neighbor and say, it's just working for my good. See, I didn't know how powerful I was until the devil came up on my doorstep. I didn't know I knew how to pray until the devil came up in my doorstep. I didn't know I knew how to intercede for my baby that was in the street until the devil came up on my doorstep. I didn't know I good. So now the afflicted have to endure something.